Good evening, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another Thursday night's episode of Fuck Your Feelings, the show. We're here tonight. We're gonna just give it a moment and see if we can get some followers to join in or some viewers. It's a very warm evening tonight here in Phoenix. If you're on the West Coast, I don't know how the weather is where you're at. But once again, happy Thursday. So what we're going to do here is just give it a little bit of a moment to get started and get this party jumping off for this evening. Tonight we're talking finances because, again, in conversations, two things pretty much influence relationships heavily, both romantic relationships and familiar relationships. It's one of those, of course, is money, finances. Who's got it, who don't got it, and how do people relate to each other in regards to it. So we're just going to pause here a moment while Toshiba is trying to get some folks to join in and come on board with us. And as of right now, I'm pretty much talking to myself, but that's cool too. Actually, I think I'll make a way to get through this anyhows. All right, we got Toshiba joining in. We got one person in here. uh, Bear with me a moment. Let me hop up real quick.
Hey sis, how are you? Thank you so much for joining. Hello Ryan, how are you? Thank you for joining.
All right, hello. Sorry about that. Had to jump up and get my drink cup. Make sure I stay hydrated this evening. Good evening, everybody that joined in. Again, we're just gonna hop in and sit and wait a moment and cap off. Part of the conversation starting this evening is let's talk finances. Me and Sheba decided we're rebranding March as Black Finance Month, right on the back
That was
of
the hashtag.
Black History Month, so we figured what a great way to follow up on, I guess, the momentum of Black History Month. There's a lot of jokes and stated about how we, of course, got the shortest month of the year to be recognized. But I'm one of them people that say, hey, I'll take any type of recognition. You know
Hey
what I'm
Duke.
saying? So, following on the back of Black History Month, we thought it would be a great idea to spend the month of March just discussing finances in the black community, in the black home, in black relationships. How do they affect us? How do they relate to us? How do they change us, influence us? Let's be honest, money is a big deal in this world that we live in, and especially in our community, because on one hand, we all need it. On the other hand, not many of us really and truly have it. And that's part of what we want to talk about.
I forgot that I was trying to remember. So you had given me when you gave me the hashtag. This is what I was.
Oh,
This is the
that's
hashtag I wanted.
that's what you wanted. Okay.
I found it. Now I'm gonna
Hola.
put it in.
All right. So, romantic relationships. Those of you that are in, well, we're pretty limited right here, but again, sex and finances. Two things, combination of both, one or the other. Pretty much, one of them reared their heads when you see relationships go kaputs. In my opinion, um, it's just the nature of the world today, man. It's a very hard thing to deal with in the course of relationships because I don't think most of us really understand the financial marketplace, the global economy, and the ideas surrounded. Let's call it the trickle down economics that we've been being sold on since the 80s, which is pretty much garbage. That the idea that wealth creation is at the top and it's somehow like a stream, it trickles on down and everybody gets a piece and everybody's better off because of the guy at the top getting astronomically rich. I don't think that's the way that it works, but that's something we're going to talk about a little bit.
Is it that people just don't understand money? Like, let's just make it simple for our community. Is it they don't understand finances? Because finance is different than money. I think you understand that. You
I think it's beyond money. Can we
can
turn
you
up the
not?
microphone? Okay, let's see. We're gonna give ourselves a little more volume there. Is that a little better there? Thank you, Shelly Love. Um, so to answer your question, I think money is very misunderstood in our community, and you know what else is misunderstood?
What?
Time. The time value of money. We've been sold on instant gratification pretty much since we were freed in this country. You know, you that's my opinion of it. But we weren't always like that.
I don't feel like it was. I mean, again, I'm not American, but I can say that we lived in a time where delayed gratification is what needed to happen, right? You were delayed when you got a mail. You were delayed when you got anything, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think in the last 20 years, because things have been so instant with the internet, yes, we've become instant gratification. But at 42 years old, I can tell you, getting letters from Jamaica when I moved to Canada, I didn't expect them instantly. And when I sent them and all of those things, I think people were, back in the day, working a 9 to 5 wasn't a bad thing and waiting for a paycheck wasn't a bad thing. But I would say in the last 20 years, definitely instant gratification has become more of a thing. And that's what the advent, in my opinion, of the internet and social media, because you get things so quickly. You want information, I can go on Google right now and get the information.
I agree. I think social media also changed the perceptions of wealth, changed how people see things. Let's be honest. 30, 40 years ago, the average person wouldn't even know what a Maybach is.
Or a Bentley, or a Rolls Royce, or even a Mercedes.
They'd potentially see one and it would be like a UFO. But what is that? Much less have some type of delusional expectation
that they can walk in with $50,000 a year and have
one
a Bentley
in your life, or that the accumulation or the purchase of material goods somehow delivers us to being at a point of success. I think that in a lot of our minds, it's this house, this car, this amount of money in my bank account, there's this almost dollar sign attached to what we see as success. But I think that's a dangerous notion. And it can lead you down some crazy paths. Because I was watching a thing on Black Wall Street a little bit. I'm going to finish it later on. But they were talking about Tulsa and the race riots in Tulsa, and how, that community was doing extremely well, to the point that it was causing animosity amongst the white community. And again, I haven't watched the whole thing, but I can almost guarantee you what that animosity was about. And here's one of my floating theories, is that other communities don't have to worry about investing into their community, because their dollars are automatically invested into their community. Mm-hmm. When a white person spends $1, chances are 75% of it is going to benefit another white person.
Facts.
When a black person spends $1, chances are 0 of that will actually benefit another black person, because of our lack of ownership in this country. And that's stems from one in particular place, in my opinion, is that emancipation came, and basically we were told, you're free.
Go off and
So imagine me, 45 years old, been a slave all my life, been working all my life, and now I got on this outfit, and that's what I own, and I'm free. That's pretty much what happened. A lot of people who had been in servitude their entire life were now told, you're free. Go live your life. How well do you think that played out?
Not well, because they had been dependent on someone else for all of their life, and now they had to be self-sufficient, and they didn't have the tools to be self-sufficient, and didn't grow up. Clearly, there were a few of us, and the snowflakes, and we have the Madam C.J. Walkers, and so forth, but the vast majority of black people going back out into the world didn't quite know how to navigate this, even freedom, much less the idea of owning their money, investing their money, making their money make more money. Like, what?
Yeah. Well, because what happened directly after slavery was basically indentured servitude. Was you had a labor force that needed money, and all they could supply was labor, which was basically the condition that they were in slavery in.
But now they were getting
But now
pennies for
it was a marketplace, so now you're able to charge your value. If your whole life you've been working for free, how much do you think master was going to pay you for your labor the day after the emancipation?
Not a lot.
I doubt it. I doubt there was...
You were doing the same service for free, and now you want me to pay you for it just because some government told me I should free you?
And if your survival was basically dependent on your ability to earn a coin, because let's be honest, they were also locking black people up for trying to earn outside of the conventional economy in any way, shape, or form. You didn't have your proper licensures, you didn't have your proper paperwork, you didn't have whatever. So again, it's been an uphill struggle for I hate the word, but the African American since we got here. It's been an uphill struggle. And I think we forgot that somewhere, I guess the 90s, we got really jiggy. Some celebrities started doing really good. It was like the shiny suits era. Everybody was balling like Jim Jones. And we just really lost sight of the long game. And now we're trying, now some of these guys that were kind of almost accomplices in some of this stuff are now figuring it out and becoming moguls and trying to advance the culture to the point of really talking about ownership and diversification of income and things of those lines, where, again, like Big said it in a rap a long time ago, like, I grew up either you slinging crack rock or you got a wicked jump shot like that. Those are your options. And I think that these kids now grow up knowing that there's a lot more out there for them than just those things. And that's a win, definitely.
Okay, so we're here to change the conversation, and you being the finance guys. Guys, I do money, I don't do finances. This is Rob's month, so I am here just to be
We're going to be talking relationships, though.
Co-captain on this, but let's change the conversation around money. We're here right now. We got here. We got here somehow, And I feel like, in my opinion, there's a devaluing of money, or at least how to earn money. Again, we now live in a place of instant gratification, and women are being fooled to think that a man making $45,000 a year is not worth ish, and they should go find that man that's driving the Bentley and make demands of him, because of course every other man is driving a Bentley or Rolls Royce, because it's apparently, according to social media, really easy to get a Bentley. And so now we are looking at these new modern age, modern day women who maybe don't value men in the same way, because we, as here's the thing, I always say, as much, because I had to have a post today, as much as black women in America tote to be the most educated, they tend to also be the most illogical, because a lot of the things they say just don't make a logical sense. Like the idea of supply and demand, right? Like there's an idea of supply and demand. And if you've got a certain infinite number of supply and a lot of demand, this is how the marketplace works. But anyways, this is your topic, babe.
No, no, I want you to contribute. Definitely, we're going to be jumping all around on the issue, but I guess why you say a lot of people don't understand is, to me, I would start with one. It's a basic, fundamental economic principle. It's called the opportunity cost, and it's kind of weird that it seems that this is something that could be informative to discuss, but I don't think most people understand what an opportunity cost is. Opportunity cost basically states that you've got two opportunities, right? Two choices, two ventures, two whatevers. You got A and you got B. By selecting A, you give up B. Can't have it no more. It's gone. The moment you choose A, B is eradicated. It's no longer an option because of time. Mm-hmm. Same thing with B. If you choose B, A is no longer available to you because time moves forward. You don't get tomorrow back. You can't go back tomorrow and renegotiate the deal. So it's an opportunity cost. Wherever you choose to allocate your time, you give up everything else that you could be allocating your time on. Okay? I don't think that most people really accept that as the reality that it is that every choice means you're sacrificing other choices, and it happens at light speed, almost like this in everyday life, all day long. Choose to cross the street, choose to walk to the store. You choose to walk to the store, you get hit by a car. If you would have waited 5 minutes, you probably didn't get hit by that car. It seems crazy, but it's a basic principle. So with that being said, I think that if we know time is almost a choice because of the allocation of it, wouldn't therefore, like the statement is, time is money, wouldn't how we choose to allocate that dollar be just as important?
Yes, it should.
You would think so. And again, I am not going to sit up here. I am talking as an academic today, not as an expert, because as we've talked, as we've discussed in previous shows, when it comes to the saving, being a saver, being frugal, she is the better half in that. Okay? So, with that being said, when you look at the time value of money, I don't think that's where men get their fair shot, because men's careers tend to appreciate. Meaning, that guy that was making $45,000 today, 10 years from now is probably making $20,000, $30,000 more than that.
But isn't that only when you have a career versus a job? Does that still hold true if you just have a job? I think the same holds true for women. If we just have a job versus a career, like you have a career in finance, like your entire career since you got a career has been in finance. So everything that you will do will be in finance, right? Like, I mean, I'm on your job search. Funny enough, I just checked. You have a message on LinkedIn,
Okay.
like
Yeah. No.
about.
Yeah. No.
Do you understand what
I
I'm
think
saying?
that's a
Like,
great point. Um, what's the difference between a job and career? Let's start there. That's a great place to start. A job is an exchange of time for money, basically. That's why you're there. You don't give a darn about the business. You don't give a darn about performance. You don't really give a darn about production. You're just there to exchange your time, fair days work for fair days pay, basically. A career, and yes, you are correct. I think we're speaking more of a career because that is a sustained
expertise.
effort and you becoming a subject matter expert along the lines of that sustained effort, staying in a particular lane, in a particular job
Yeah.
long enough that it becomes a career. I think, but then that's funny
No,
because
I
there's.
don't think you stay in the job in necessarily. This is where I'm going to disagree. Like,
Okay,
this
because
is why
we're
when
just
I
talking
look
theories.
at when I look at my credentials versus your credentials, right? Like I've talked about that. Like I went to school, I got a bachelor's in psychology, thought I was going to go to law school, then became a mom and started working, like full-time working. Yes, I got advancements in my jobs and I had titles that may indicate I had a career, but I simply had jobs. Like I had a job over here with this title, I have a job. And yes, do I have a bunch of skills that can be utilized in particular spaces? Yes. As a consultant, which I am right now, I found that all of the experience that I've accumulated over the years is helpful for other people. But I don't have an expertise. You, on the other hand, have an expertise, right? Having been the person who basically navigates your job search, I see the conversations and people recruiting you because of an expertise that you can carry into several different industries, right? Like
Okay.
you're not just over here. Like you can take your expertise in several different industries because it's everybody deals with money, right?
Right.
Every organization deals with money. Every other organization has some kind of underwriting of money or finances or analysis of money, which you're an expert in that. So that's,
I'm
you know what I'm
following
saying?
you.
Like that's going to
So,
be very different. A lawyer, a doctor, they're an expert in certain things. But again, I've had jobs and they were good jobs with nice titles and lots of money. But I can't say. I always say that I'm a jack of all trades and a master of none.
okay. I think let's piggyback on that conversation because, and again, what now we're trying to discuss a bit is the difference between job and career. So let's say a career would be a sustained skill set, a trade, or area of expertise.
Yes, that can be
Because
monetized.
they can be monetized. Because even some unconventional jobs that you might think of, like no one really thinks of construction worker as a career, but if you've been working as a construction worker for 15 years, you certainly have one. Because your expertise, your skill set, and your
And you're not generally just a
understanding of the
construction worker. You are specialized in a certain part
Right.
of construction. Like they're general contractors, but a lot of people in construction, their specialization might be being an electrician, or their specialization might be dealing with wire coppers. And there's a certain way to do so. They're specialized in understanding that anytime I go in, there's a wire copper person. Like, and so again, they have an expertise that whether it's in Dubai or it's in Jamaica or if it's in Canada, they have that expertise that will translate over time. Do you understand? Like that's how I've always looked at it. And I think for me, that's my concern when people are looking at relationships and looking at partners and choosing partners and let's have a fuck your feelings moment. This is why I say, yeah, Rob and I got together and it's nice and we look good on this space and we look good together and it's ooey gooey gushy feelings. But I'm not going to lie to you and I haven't lied to Rob. When I looked at Rob and his credentials, I understood what the trajectory of our life could look like because he had an expertise. And no matter where life took us, this expertise would translate well because it had to do with finance. Every organization will need an underwriter, a credit analyst, a financial analysis, all of which he's an expert in. You're at an expert level. You also had an MBA in international finance. So, duh, like, smart for me to say, okay, this is probably someone I would hitch my wagon to.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm glad that you have that you had that type of understanding of it. But let's talk finance. Why aren't more women comfortable hitching their wagon to a man's?
Because we're supposed to be independent. Sorry.
How's that working for y'all?
I don't know, ladies. How's being independent working for y'all?
I mean, we don't have a big audience, so let's be fair. I wasn't expecting a raucous response or nothing, but I think there's not. There's a hard stop at the end of that Independence Road.
But here's the thing: understanding money and finances, right? Money, you like you said, you go in every day and you earn it. Having a lock on your finances is something very different. And if we were to look at what increases exponentially, right? And I don't want to use big words because at the end of the day, but something goes up, something goes down. The older we get, something often goes down, right? There's a depreciation, right? If not, like, we don't appreciate, unfortunately, as women, we don't appreciate as we get older. No human being generally appreciates as they get older, but your earning potential can. Your earning potential. And so, looking at, again, the totality of your career, I was like, this is a man who, again, will appreciate in value as he goes up in his career, because the more experience you get in this field, you go in different income brackets. So good for me.
And until you decide that you want a man, and then not so good for you.
No, I was saying good for me when I attach my wagon to you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That. No, because here's the thing. Like you were saying, many women have adopted the attitude of, as my career grows, my earnings grow. You know who else does that?
Who else does that?
Men. So when I hear a woman talking like, as her career grows, the quality of man that she should land should increase, that sounds to me like, so when y'all get married, you're going to carry him through the threshold, right? Like, you're going to pick him up.
Why'd you say that? Because I'm not following.
You don't follow that?
No.
That goes back to the conversation of, if you're strong, what's he supposed to do? If you've taken over the role of provider, what is he supposed to do?
So what about the argument, then do better? As a man, just do better. I'm going to play devil's advocate tonight.
No, I'm going to marinate on that question for a second because I want to be as strategic in my answer to that.
Right, because if I'm a woman who's out there and I am a high earner, right, and, Uncle Kevin, love him or hate him, he says there are not a lot of women who make 75,000 plus, right? So I'm a high earner. Why would I not expect you to just do better? You should do better so that you also can be a high earner.
I got it.
I'm ready.
Here's the kicker of it. That's all fine and dandy, except for, and I can't put it into words. I would just make it a comparison. So you're telling the guy making 45,000, you're at 75,000, do better. Who do you think enjoys their life more, the guy making 45 or the woman making 75? Who has more dating options?
Well, based on supply and demand, the man does, because there are more women than men. And again, at a $75,000 or $85,000 earner, most men may look at me as that earner and go, I don't want to be diminished as a man, or I don't want to be emasculated as a man because the woman makes more money.
You're a leader.
Or is that more of the woman's concern than the men, right? As a man, if your woman makes more money than you, right, are you concerned about that, or would I be more concerned about that?
I think it's a mixture. I think ideally, a woman making more than her man is not a deal breaker if they have kind of normal gender roles. You know what I'm saying? Even though she's making more money, how they function in the house is more of, well, no, actually, it doesn't even have to be like that. They just have to have an agreement on that. You know, he could be totally be that. Like, there's some guys cool with taking the domestic functions away from, you know, just the way that it. She's more educated. She has more options in the workplace. So he's like, I'm gonna hold the house down. I'm gonna deal with the kids. You go out there and work. If
How
they're
well does that work?
if it works, if both of them psychologically are on board with it, it works. But I think that's a very tough line to keep over a long time, because ultimately the woman's nature is to want to be provided for, not to want to provide for.
Here's my problem. You said the word traditional. I think as a traditional woman, that wouldn't work. How do you have proper gender roles if I'm out there earning and you're out there being domestic?
That's kind of a good question. How'd y'all even get to that point? But I think that we see it a lot in society though? Because I think that a lot of women, they drive the career train until they get into a certain stage in life, and then it's like, oh shit, I forgot all about career. So let me jump off the career train for a year or two, hop on the family train, find some guy that's on board with the way I want to have my family. Because again, this whole venture is kind of like, she's leading. You feel what I'm saying? Ultimately, it's she's kind of leading.
Well, of course she's leading. She makes the money.
She's selecting. It's almost, and when you go to those type of relationships in the dynamic, it's almost like the woman selects the man, not really the other way around. The guy making 45,000 doesn't really get to run up on the woman making 75 and say, "Hey, I want you, come with me."
Or does he? So this, I wanted to have this kind of discourse because
No, it's good.
I wanted to say that's the difference between earning money and understanding finances. So I will talk about me specifically. I was good at earning money. And yes, I have investments and I do a bit of that, but what the pandemonium, the panorama, which is just COVID and the pandemic, as a Jamaican, a West Indian, that's what we be saying. What it showed me is that I was good at money. I wasn't necessarily good at finances. So yes, Rob is giving me credit. I am frugal. So if Rob gives me $500 today and he looks at me at the end of April, I probably have $300 of that left. Like, I can mix and match and make money work, right? Like, because I'm always thinking about tomorrow. But the pandemonium showed me that, as much as I was a good money maker, when it came to long term, it may not have been sustainable for me, because I had a job, again, a good job, but I didn't have a career. And so when we talk about money in our community, I think we also have to understand finances. Mm-hmm. We have to understand spreadsheets. We have to understand how far money goes. We have to understand how to make our money work for us. Like, that is, so a man making 45,000, a woman making 75,000. The reality is that man making 45,000 may have no debt, right? Mm-hmm. Has invested. Maybe, he is 35 years old, has been working since he was, let's just say 15 years old, lived at home until he was 25 years old. For the first 10 years of his life, all he did was save the money that he earned. So he had, investments and all those things. He had good money management skills from his parents. Now, when he moved out at 25, instead of moving out on his own, he got roommates. And so for the first 5 years, he was splitting the bills with someone else. So then he had 5 years. So now we're looking at 15 years. And now for these 5 years from 30 to 35, all of that 15 years actually turned around, and now he owns his home. And you know what I'm saying? So a lot of the times when we're having conversations about, a lot of us, we're just looking at the front, right? Like, Toshiba earns this, Rob earns that. Let's say Toshiba earns more money than Rob. That is power. But the reality is Toshiba might make $85,000 but has $60,000 in debt. Rob may make $65,000 but has zero debt. and has investments and all of those different things. And do you understand what I'm
No,
saying?
I
And I
know.
think
I've
these are
actually
the
literally had
conversations
that
that are
argument
interesting
before
for
in a
me.
relationship, and it's weird to even be arguing at that level about that type of issue. But again, it happens. I'm talking experience sometimes, you know. Man, you know, we all have a certain expectation of how we should be treated when we get a windfall or a bag or some extra money or whatever. Most people, you look to try to do something nice or special for the people close to you, and it's like you want to have the feeling that everybody's on the same page. And when you don't get that, that's where usually things start to get a bit more
You lost me again.
tenuous.
I'm lost. I don't know where you're going.
Is again, I'm talking about in relationships when both parties feel invested in the other, things tend to be good. When there's more of, when it feels like more of a one-way type of street, things start to get a bit more difficult in relationships. And like what Duke Nation has said, the easiest way to get into that is, the comment was, you need to understand and stop living above your means. I think that's a lesson that we all can do better at. Some obviously better than others. Some people are already have a frugal nature. Some people tend to want the latest, greatest, and best, and don't really
People,
care.
question to Duke is: do a lot of people understand what above their means mean? Right? To a lot of people, as long as I've got a couple of extra dollars left after making that purchase or whatever it might be, then it's a different situation, right? There is a funny thing about understanding income, expendable income, to have expenditures. Like, there are certain words, unfortunately, we don't understand in our community, and sometimes it surpasses education. Money in the home is not talked about. Kids are not learning from their parents' interest rates. They're not understanding about compounding interest. They're not understanding about, again, if you borrow 50,000 and somebody gives you 50,000, but it's now you now owe 20% of 50,000, what you now owe them is 60,000. So now you owe them an extra $10,000. So even though you got 50, you now have to give them back 50 plus 10. Right? So those things are not being taught. And again, people see $85,000. But really, after taxes, what is $85,000? About $60,000, roughly. Let's just assume it's 60, right? Let's just assume you're at a 30% tax rate, 17.25.5. So yeah, about $60,000, right? Now, when you go out, let me just give you an example. You go out and you look for a place to live. Let's assume you're renting. And a lot of places will say, okay, we need you to make 3 times the amount of this rent. However, what that apartment is looking at is not your after-tax earning. They're looking at your before-tax earning. So you make $85,000. You break down that $85,000. Let's call that, what is that? About $6,000, a little bit over $6,000 a month, right? Now about seven times two. Yeah. So let's call that $7,000 a month. So you go and you want a $2,400 a month apartment. Sounds good, right? So the apartment approves you because according to your before tax, you make enough to pay for that. But guess what happens? After taxes, if you're really only making that $60,000, that $2,400 is actually half of what you're getting paid. So now you're left with $2,600 left over to pay for all of the other expenditures you have. Is that being taught in the home? And again, is that even being looked at when people are making those decisions that they're living above their means? Most of us are doing calculations based on our what? Pre-tax.
Yeah. I think that's, yeah, I think most people look at that when you ask them how much they make, they always going to quote their pre-tax, but what you actually wind up having in your account to spend is something totally different from that.
So this is why this conversation, and again, you said we want to make it Black Finance Month, is saying, and thank you Duke for that comment, is what does it even mean to live within your means, below your means, and above your means, and what are you using to calculate what your means are?
Well, the first thing I think to understand about living above your means or living within your means is one of the areas that I work in, and I did not understand as a young man coming up, and I still have challenges with to this day, is credit facility. The power, the leverage of credit. Most people look at credit as an ability to borrow. That's not really what it is. It's the cost of borrowing. That's what credit really is. And when your credit is better, the cost of borrowing money is exponentially less than when your credit is not as good.
So basically, it costs money to be poor. It costs a lot more money to be poor. And the system preys on people that are poor.
Yeah, I think Mark Twain had a quote, and I'm paraphrasing.
And let me not say
line.
poor. People whose credit is bad. There's a difference because you can be okay and still have bad credit. But generally, most people who have bad credit is because they don't have the means to pay back the money they have borrowed.
Okay.
Is that not the case? Or am I me, the finance guy? You go ahead.
Yeah, I lost my train of thought there for a minute. Sorry. So, again, get my train of thought back. When your credit is higher, meaning you are more leveraged, meaning you owe more money, credit is more expensive. It costs more to borrow money. So say when you have good credit, you go buy a $20,000 car over the lifetime and you finance it for 5 years. Over the lifetime of that loan, you pay a 2, 3, 4% on that $20,000 over the lifetime of that loan. When you have not so good credit and you go buy a car, you get a $20,000 car at a 18, 20, depending on your state, 25% rate. And what happens is you wind up paying 25% interest on that $20,000 over the course of 5 years. And what you'll see is in the case of the higher interest rate, you've probably paid back over the life of the loan $40,000, $50,000, where at the lower interest rate, that guy's probably paid 25, definitely no more than 30. So over the course of that same 5 years, that same $20,000 cost a person with challenged credit $50,000, where that $20,000 would cost a person with good credit $25,000, let's say.
So it would be interesting in a relationship, instead of talking about how much money you make, and be like, what's your credit score?
That would be a good conversation to have, and not to make excuses, the vast majority of our community was not raised even being taught about credit, much less the importance of it.
And I get that, but that's an excuse. And
I said it.
It's a huge excuse, but wouldn't that solve a lot of these issues within relationships? Because our show is a relationship show. If it was a sit down and it was instead of how much money you make, Miss, I make 85 and you make 45 or 50, what's your credit score? Because if Mr. 45 and 50,000, his credit score is 750, and Miss 85,000, her credit score is 550, who's more valuable right now? 750 or 550?
Who has access to cheaper money? That would be the most accurate question, and definitely the guy he makes less, but he has access to cheaper money. So in the event that he decides he wants to do something different, and he needs to leverage that borrowing power, because that's again what credit allows you to do, is borrow money. That's where you see that value increase. The credit score is is extremely
And
important
our
because,
sponsor has entered the building. Thank you, sponsor Sterling Sage. Credit score is important.
and again, because let's be honest, most millionaires don't use their own money to finance their debts. They use somebody else's.
So would that change some of the discussions? Again, our show's about changing the conversation around Black relationships. Would that change some of the discussion in our community between our Black men and Black women? I'm going to specifically pick just on the United States of America for a second, because that's where I currently am sitting. Would that change a lot of the conversation? Because again, Black American women told that they are the most educated and the higher earners in the community. But here's the thing with higher education. Higher education comes with debt. Debt that unfortunately, even if you're coming in at a $85,000 a year job, you just got potentially $150,000 education. I don't know what your rates are because Canadian rates are different. So I'm just making up rates here, everybody. But let's just assume that, right? You're coming out of school and you didn't get a scholarship and you didn't get grants and so you had to pay for this. You had to get loans and you paid for this, right? Now you may again be earning higher. However, you also had to spend more to get that. I'm a PhD, as Uncle Kevin likes to play.
And again, our community has definitely been scammed with education. Because one, it was positioned as if education was going to grant us access to everywhere we wanted to go, and it definitely didn't do that. And again, the debt component of education, that's what Kevin talks about. If you're going into science, technology, engineering, and math, having $80,000 in student loans is manageable over the course of your professional life. When you are going into
lovely degrees like mine, like psychology,
a career, well, I mean, yeah, but let's say social work or government entities where it's possible to have a high salary, or what a lot of people get stuck with in America, unfortunately, is to be a teacher. You need a lot of education to be a teacher in this country, but unfortunately, they don't pay very much. And that's why we have a problem in this country where there are people who would probably be good teachers, but they don't seek that as an occupation. Never. Because they know that the salaries are lowered and and the investment is high. Imagine if doctors made $50K. How many people you think would be going to med school?
Not many.
Not many.
So Sterling Sage says, I once heard a very rich man say that he advised his sons never to use cash. Each of them got a credit card at 21, and he taught them how to leverage credit and make it work for them, to use someone else's money to help finance their lifestyle and make more money. Duke also says learning about finances and credit is very important for the Black community. Absolutely. And I think that's why Rob really wanted to have this discussion, because that is part of the conversation in Black relationships. Because again, relationships are not just relationships like this. It's a relationship that you have with the entire people in the community, your children, your parents, and everyone else. And the problem is money is almost like a shh in our community.
Mm-hmm. We don't like to talk about it. We don't. And here's another one that I find, and especially when I was looking at this Black Wall Street documentary earlier, and it's a theory I've been working on for a while now, but I remember growing up, and it's like, all money, you would hear the saying, all money ain't good money. Like, if you had a lot of money, but you were a sleazy type of character, your money didn't trump the fact that you were a sleazy type of character. That was kind of how you were dealt with in the community, as a sleazy character, not as the guy with the money. It doesn't feel that way anymore. It feels like as long as you got some money, people don't care how you went about and got it. That's why scamming is such
it's glorified,
acceptable, and almost glorified. Like I'm a scammer. Like
It used to be the thing when I used to be out in Miami in the
Huh?
strip clubs in Miami. So back in the day in the strip clubs, well, not even back in the days, a couple of years ago in the strip clubs pre-COVID, like there was literally people would walk and be like, "Oh, that's the scammer section, that's the baller." You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And the
like
scammers were trying to outdo everybody else, and it was they were known as scammers, but the girls used to get on stage and get excited with certain things, and the DJs would announce such and such is in the building, and I'm like, okay, that, and they're like, the scammer, and I'm
the
like,
money spends the
this is
same.
a thing. Like this is again, we glorify that, but it goes back to the conversation we having this week where you said, unfortunately, people are looking at rappers and celebrities and so forth, and basketball players as if they speak to what our community is like. Like, oh, we've come up, but they're a very tiny percentage of the overall community. You can speak on that.
Absolutely. They're kind of those that are. I think that let's be real. I don't really view that as black excellence. Um, I believe that's what white America uses to capitulate to us and say, "Hey, look, you guys are making it. You look, you got Puffy, you got Jay-Z, you got Obama. What more do you
And it's
want?"
small. They're
And it's a
taking again
small, tiny
a percentage of a percentage of a
us,
percentage.
But the reality of it is, most of us out here are trying to out here make a way. And we were having a conversation earlier. I'm not a very, there's not a ton of, you won't hear me quote Bible verses very often. Let's put it like that. But there is one tenet in the Bible that it says, "Envy not thy oppressors," and that just has always hit to me as something that was incredibly, incredibly wise. Like, why would free slaves emulate slave masters? That makes zero sense to me. But somehow we've been herded and psychologically manipulated to be in that position a bit.
Well, Duke said most of them rappers are wearing fake jewelry and spending way more than what they make. They are the perfect examples of living above their means. This is fact. However, we also now live in a world where everything is curated, right? You can curate your life on social media, right? We don't get to curate as much because we're live with you. And so you get whatever vibe is happening between us, you get that. We don't tape this and then put out snippets and I don't edit it and then you have a show. This is what you get. But a lot of people, guess what? You don't get the live version. You get the edited and the clips and the so forth. But people take that as reality, right? I said to people, you know what I'm saying? Don't let anybody tell you about your value because most people don't know the difference between a diamond and cubic zirconia.
Mm-mm.
So there are a lot of, women nowadays talking about a man that makes, I've watched so many interviews over the last little bit, like a man who makes a 9 to 5, I'm not going after that. Like that ain't it. And I'm just like, I'm sorry. What? A man who goes to a job to make his money. Women are saying that ain't it. That is not it. And I'm just like, because you, again, logic, right? Like it's about what's logical. It's not, it doesn't make logic that there are this many people who are out there with the baller lifestyle and this many that are 9 to 5. So your option is this much. It's illogical.
You know how our grandparents and great grandparents had money working them $30,000, $40,000 jobs where they had way more wealth than we have currently.
Absolutely.
They got together young. They bought a house. They had a family. They paid off that house. And that home value appreciated over the life of growing that family over 30 years. That $80,000 investment turned into a $160,000 investment. But not only that, I've actually seen it. You know what happens when you pass away? You leave your child a home, they never have to pay rent. They never have to pay the mortgage. They have to maintain the home and pay the property tax. So then what happens is now the wages that they go out and exchange time for money for can now be accumulated because so much of it is not tied up into living expenses. And then what happens is now they have an endowment to pass down to their kids. So now by this third generation, these kids are not only receiving a home, but but an estate in just 3 generations, making 30, 40, $50,000.
Well, again, that's why the conversation has to be different. And, we're going to just read some of these comments here. Sterling Sage, well, let's start with Duke. He says, I call it the filter effect. And that's exactly what it is. We live in a filter world. Everything is filtered because they want you to see their life in a certain lens. Right? And that's unfortunate. Sterling Sage says, one of the things about living above your means is not just necessarily spending money on luxury or high ticket items. Sometimes it's just daily Starbucks, eating out once or twice a week, and Amazon habit, buying Whole Foods as opposed to Walmart. This is facts. Rob and I have these conversations we actually had an argument about it the other day. He came in here and he was like, what do you want for dinner? He's like, I feel like such and such. And the sub is like, it was like a sub place around here. And it's like $12 per sub. And they're okay. But because I no longer really eat meat, it's not beneficial to me. And by the time he buys his and buys this, and I was like, why would you do that when honestly, you can just go to the grocery store and I'll make dinner with X amount of dollars? Because again, you might think a purchase here for $12 and a purchase here for $10 and a purchase here for $5, and you have, now you've got a $27 expenditure, but that $27 at the grocery store could have had a whole different impact. But that's conversations that people don't have because, again, everybody wants to make it look like they're living better than they can. But the thing about frugality is what extends your earning power. But that's just my 2 cents because I happen to be frugal.
And I think that's where, as a couple, you guys have to balance each other out, because we all have our areas of focus. We all have our strengths, and we all have our weaknesses, and that's where you guys should kind of complement each other out. But yeah, as a community, how we represent our lifestyle and our actual lifestyle doesn't always add up. And then where we are economically and the amount of money that I wasn't even going to address it, Duke. I was just going to kind of segue into the next conversation, but I'm glad bro said, or maybe he just didn't want to wait to eat, or maybe he just hadn't had a sub in about a month and wanted one. But
didn't make financial sense to me. But again, it is what it is.
But to get back on the task of, that's how wealth is created. There's two sides to it. There's making more money. There's saving more money. Both are equally important. If you're not as good at making more, then you can compensate for saving more.
So Kadar just made a point. Thank you, Kadar71, who's just joined up. I was dirt poor growing up, like missing meals poor. So now that I've made it to the upper middle class, I feel that I deserve to treat myself. That is a good point, and I think that is a lot of the mentality. But is you treating yourself overextending yourself so that when it comes to the long-term impact on your finances, this treat... So let me give you an example. There are women who will buy Chanel purses but only carry $10 in them.
Yeah.
Louis Vuitton purses but only have $100 in them.
Yeah.
And so they're looking for someone to take them out in the free dinners. This is when it comes down to the women who are exchanging their time for free dinners and so forth, because they want to create an image, and I get that. I get when we have grown up in a certain thing, when we make it to the top, right? It's one thing. When I do my budget, I actually have an entertainment line in my budget. So I make a monthly budget, and in it are my fixed expenses, right? So the stuff that I know that I have to pay. And there's the expenses that are a little, my miscellaneous, my stuff, whatever. But I do put an entertainment line in there. And let's just say my entertainment budget is $100. Let's just throw it, let's say it's $100 or $200. Once I have extended that $100 or $200, the entertainment for that month is done. And so I am very cognizant of how I choose to entertain myself. Is it worth it for me to make that purchase? I have been doing this budget since I got a job, my first full-time job in my 20s. I'm 42 now, so it's called almost 2 decades. I got even more diligent in my 30s when I started making what Kevin Samuels would say is upper middle class money. Like, I haven't made, other than now in my life, I hadn't made less than $65,000 since I was in my early 30s. So, and I went all the way up to almost $90,000 a year pre-pandemic, right around the pandemic. I kind of left the corporate world, but I always made sure that budgeting was a huge thing for me. So when I was treating myself, it wasn't just that I was going out there with my bank card all willy-nilly spending. I had already put it in my budget.
Yeah.
Sorlin Sage says, Duke says facts. Sorlin says nothing wrong with treating yourself, but is it weekly, monthly, daily? And do you have a budget for your treats, or do you factor your treats into your budget? Fun money should always be included. Duke said there isn't anything wrong with treating yourself from time to time, but if treating yourself means that you can't wait until you get paid again, then you've spent too much. Kadar says, thank you.
Agreed. Great commentary, folks. I like how everybody just kind of chimed in. I think that's where we have the most opportunity is what is within your means. Where's the line between frugal and being poor? What is the line between saving more and earning more? Because again, there's just certain principles in this economy that make it more difficult. Labor, when you start getting over certain earnings, you're taxed at 35%. Whereas investment income in this country, meaning I put $1,000 somewhere and make $10,000, that money is only taxed at 15%. Who do you think those laws benefit? People who work or people who already have money and just invest?
People who already have money and just invest.
Exactly.
Because they always say don't invest more than you can lose.
But we're always been kind of pitched in this country that work hard and that's the way to success. When truly the way to success is to better manage what you have and get it into the investment market as quickly as possible, because that's where the real returns are. If I trade 40 hours of my life, I get taxed on my earnings of that for 35%. But yet I literally can put a check in the mail and reap significant benefits over that 100, 200, 300% returns, and that money is only taxed at 15%. That lets you know who Uncle Sam values more.
Which is why it's important in our community to invest. So before we go on, I'm going to read, we had 5 poll answers, and we're going to probably end this show a little earlier than we've been ending our shows. But so I had 5 questions. One was, do you consider yourself a good money manager? 75% of people said yes, and 25% of people said no. Has finances ever been the main reason for a breakup? Yes, 27%, and no, 73%. Can you be free without money? The options were of course or hell nah. 38% said of course, 62% said hell nah. What do you place more value on, a person's character or a person's finances? 87% said character, 13% said finances, and the last question is, do you have investments? Well, apparently our group of followers and viewers have investments, because 67% said yes and no, 33%. Let me just read where Kadar says, is 137,000 middle class? Question mark. I was the first to graduate high school, first to grad school, so I never learned finances. It's upper middle class. Well, in your country.
Yeah, no, in most countries. 137, you're actually in the top 5% of earners. You're doing significantly better than most
95% of people who have jobs.
I think, and that's, but 137,000 doesn't make a person feel rich. That's how poorly finances are understood in our community. That literally being in the top 5% does not necessarily guarantee you lifestyles of the rich and famous.
But let me also add, and this is something that Uncle Kevin likes to say, and I think people need to again understand that $137,000 in New York or California versus $137,000 in Georgia or Texas, they're two very different $137,000, right? The way you can live on $137,000 in New York, trying to get anything in Manhattan, good luck with that. But you can live very well and have a 5-bedroom house with 2 acres in Atlanta or Texas on that and still be able to do the things that you want. And I think that's where people need to also understand that. It's not inflation, but there's an adjustment for cost of living. Is it a cost of living based on the interest rates and stuff in the different states? Again, Canada's very different because
it just kind of accounts for the cost of living, i.e. the cost of groceries, rent, and gas, and childcare. Those are the 4 major components of expenses versus income.
So, Sorrel and Sage just says, I know how to make a dollar holler, but I manage money better when I have more of it, laugh out loud. Also read a study that said 75 annually was enough to make most people feel happy. 75,000 annually if you're a single person. And I bet you that's what the article said. $75,000 trying to be in a couple or have a family? No. I would say $75,000 by yourself is very, very different. Me having $75,000 with no child to take care of would have been a whole different world than me at 75 and a dependent. I can't say that would be enough to make me happy in a family. That's my 2 cents. Duke said 75K right now is not enough anymore.
And again, 75K still puts you in the top 15, 10% of earners. That's how poorly economics is understood in this community. That being in the top 15, 10, 5%, most people look at those type of earners as being the median. And that's where the insanity starts.
So again, Sorrel and Sage said, yes, 75K as a solo person. Yes, I agree. 75K as a solo person with no dependents. And again, if you're living within your means and you're having a budget and you're saving, that can sustain you. Because again, if you even think about the idea of, I grew up with the idea that you pay yourself first, right? It's like tithing to yourself. And so you take 10%. There was a while years ago before my finances got all screwed up with, again, COVID and stuff, but I would pay myself first. So when my pay came in, 10% of my pay would go into savings automatically. So if my take-home pay was $5,000 a month, I would be saving 10%, which was $500. And it was happening consistently. I would pay myself for it. And this was outside of me putting away in other investments. But that's how I would make my money work for myself. So I could imagine being a single person who just has to worry about feeding themselves, who just has to worry about clothing themselves, who just has to worry about paying their own rent. You can live in a studio.
And here's another part about, because 75, that's a good number to use as an example of. All right, 75,000. So using what most financial planners would consider acceptable lifestyle, they would say about 20% of your income should go towards your rent/mortgage, whether you're owning or buying. 75,000. If you're gonna take 20% of that, you're talking about 15,000. You know what I mean? You're talking about $1,200 a month. We're in Phoenix. $1,200 a month ain't gonna get you very far. People are paying $1,200, $1,500 a month, but only making $30,000, $40,000 a year. Now y'all starting to see why this economy is in such a not as great as social media would like to have you think it is place. Because most people making $75,000 feel that they should probably be able to afford a nicer place than $1,200. But again, credit is a big factor on that because a $1,200 mortgage with great credit is probably going to get you a $300,000 house. That is adequate for 75K. But living in a studio apartment with animal roommates in New York City off of 75K, paying 1,200, don't feel so great.
As Duke said, that not gonna make it. So what Duke was saying is, Soren said I could do well with 75K. Duke said 75 before taxes is not enough even for a solo person. Can't make it Yadman voice. Soren said making it means different things to different people. I live very well on 69K pre-kid. And Kadar71 says, I put 15% in my job's 401k and they match that, which is actually very smart.
That's investment.
That's investment. Here's the thing. I'm all about money that you can't touch for a while.
Nope.
The issue is a lot of us put money away, but it's so easily accessible we can bring it right back. If you are taking something away and locking it away for a period of time, and if they're like, when I was back in the corporate world, I loved the matching program. I would all be about, let me maximize as much of that as possible because I understood that my money that I was earning was then making me money. And the good part about that is then it lowers your tax. And that's against things that we're not teaching. Most workplaces, when you're doing that 15%, they now take your salary and your salary, let's assume that 137 was your salary, Kadar. Your salary actually isn't 137. It's whatever is left after you've done that 50%. At least that's how they've done it in Canada. I can't speak again to the US. You guys do things differently. But in Canada, where I grew up, that's how you did it. Whatever you were investing it was after that they would tax me out, right? So if I was making 80 and I was putting 15% in that was matching, it was the 85% that was left over that I got taxed on.
That's usually how your 401k contributions are usually pre-tax. But again, that's in effect if you're employed, and that's really excellent employee. Usually they start matching around 7% or so, but going on up to 15, that's incredible. How I would look at that, I tend to try to contribute to my 401k rather aggressively just because that's essentially giving yourself a raise. If your employer matches 7% and you save 7% of your salary, you basically gave yourself a 7% raise.
I'm done with Duke Nation right now. And sir, okay. So Duke Nation said cost of living has gone up so much that 75K is nothing right now. Sorlin says, and my credit score is dope. Always has been, which it was my point in the beginning. Somebody making 75K with a 580 credit and somebody making 75K and a 750 credit score. What's perfect credit here? 800?
8 and some, you can be 8. I've never seen over 850.
So you're great. You're about great if you're in the 750 to 850. So let's think about whatever the highest range of credit score is very different. And this is why in relationships, this conversation is interesting. And Kadar, you weren't on earlier, but I would be interested if you are married or you're dating in a relationship, would you say to the person, or let's say if you're single, would you ask the next woman you date, let me see your credit score? Because the state of dating right now and the state of relationships in our community are, again, Black women are touting themselves as the highest educated and the biggest earners. Yet sometime in order to make that money, I will repeat, you had to get a lot of student loans and you're in a lot of debt. And so the reality is your credit score is going to mean more than your salary. That's a conversation that people need to be having. There's a couple that I watched. They have a podcast and they exchange credit scores.
No, and that makes sense. But I'm also thinking from the person. I'm just really running this out on the, kind of in the course of dating. But I also think on the flip side of that, like he's saying, I'm dating. I would not share that with my dates. As a guy, I would probably that's probably a few dates type of topic for there, but the woman that I'm taking out on the date, I'd probably want to know that on day one.
You'd want to know what her credit score is.
Yeah, because that's like, again, he's And the way the marketplace goes and the dynamic goes, it's again, he's most likely taking on your financial burdens, not the other way around.
Well, because that's the thing. Because, and I'm not necessarily saying that men should share their credit score. And I know this clip might go viral.
Uh-oh.
I am saying that it would be interesting if men asked women what their credit score
Yeah.
is. Because again, I'm a PhD, right? Miss, I'm a PhD might be an $85,000, $95,000, $105,000 earner, but have crappy credit. But Mr. 75,000, which again is still in the top 10-15% of earning, may have gotten a scholarship to school, right? So he didn't have any debt because he played ball or basketball or football or hockey or whatever he played, got an academic scholarship. There's all of these ways that people get educated. So you're like, you went to school 4 years for free. We wish. So Rob's first degree in economics was completely free on a basketball scholarship.
I was going to add something too, and so and say said, if it's a casual thing, then no. This is part of my, I think casual, that's part of why our community is so fucked up. Like, too much casual, not enough purpose, and we just all over the place. You know what I'm saying?
Sorry guys, I wasn't choking at that. It was right down the road.
She swallowed down the wrong pipe, it sounds like, so she's going to over there and try not to die. And we're going to probably get close to... And if someone's sharing financial info with me, then that's an honor and nothing to take lightly. Soil and Sage. Again, I think, though, when you start talking finances the earlier you start having them conversations, the more indicative it is that you're not playing around, that you are indeed dating with a purpose.
And we're not young people here, right? Like
That's
our show
really
is
why I say
our
that.
show is not geared to the young people, right? Kevin's got that little market corner. Are for older people who are looking to be in marriages, maybe are married, or have been divorced and looking at second marriages. Like these are for grown folks who have been through some things. So the reality is we are at a point where there shouldn't necessarily be a casual thing. There should be a dating with purpose and dating with intention. And as we said on last week's show, because one of our loyal followers, Chammy, was saying that, you know, she's discovered Kevin Samuels and she asks us about his concept of should you go on a date when you're not sexually attracted to the man? And I said, no, not on a second date. If on a first date you realize like, oh my God, like this ain't it, don't accept a second date, because what we're not realizing is time and money are being invested. What we at 35 plus shouldn't be talking about a casual thing.
Kadar says, I'm in a relationship, no student loans. My woman has bad credit and loans past due. I love her, but I am 2 times divorced, so I won't marry again. Props to you, bro. Like, I just hope you've disclosed that to her, and I'm sure she probably gets the gist of it anyways. Basically, what that man is saying is, I don't want to bear the brunt and the responsibility of your entire financial life. You know, that's what prenups are about, man. Like, that's like most people hate the idea, especially in our community. We always think that it's like, if a prenup is a part of the conversation,
you don't
then
love
me. Ain't in the building, and it's actually the exact opposite. It's communicating what's what before, during, and in case the relationship breaks down. Again, I don't see any craziness about that type of conversation, but most people think like if you talk about what happens if this doesn't work out, then you're kind of jinxing it. But I think the opposite. I think you should be talking about what happens if this don't works out. That way it's not a surprise.
And we've said this from the beginning, and we will be saying this 10 years from now when we're doing this show. A relationship is a business. Okay? It is a merger of 2 people. And the reality is nobody merges with a company. Like no 2 companies merge together if they don't benefit each other. And I think if people looked at relationships like that, there's a cost-benefit analysis on a relationship. Let's just call it what it is. So if we're going to tote ourselves as being so educated and so smart and so forth, then as women, we should understand cost benefit analysis. And again, supply and demand, right? If there is more demand for supply, the person on the other end happens to be more valuable. So Kadar, you are the prize. And therefore, you have to do the cost benefit analysis in terms of, if I invest into this relationship and merge my life with this person, what's the cost to me? What's the benefit to me? And it sucks for people, but that's the reality of relationships. So we're missing a whole bunch of conversations
now
here.
We're getting going a little bit, but we're getting ready to wrap up on y'all.
So let me go here. Let me just make sure. Okay, so Kadar said that kind of sounds. Sorolin says to Kadar, that kind of sounds like bidding time. Sorolin Sage also says Lolan's past due is a deal breaker for me. Duke says if you do get married again, you better hit her with that prenup. Sorolin Sage says I don't mind debt, but your credit score and ability to be responsible with finances is paramount. Kadar 71 says correct again. She would leave if I asked for a prenuptial agreement. Let me stop there for a second.
Yep.
I have to pause.
Well, it's that attitude.
No, let me pause.
Go ahead.
For a moment. So let me understand. She would leave you, who again, in my idea, is the prize. You are the person without the debt, who is a high earner, who all of the things, if you put a pro and con list or you did a cost benefit analysis, you would rank really well. So this other person would leave you if you looked at your relationship as you should as a business.
Yeah, here's my problem with having a problem with a prenup. A prenup just states that what's mine before we got together is mine, and what's yours before we got together is yours. A prenup clearly, every single prenup in history has clearly outlined that what we do from the point that we get married on together is 50-50.
And if a woman
when you're getting mad, but when you're getting mad about this prenup, to me, that's signaling you're not planning on making more together. You're trying to get into what's already there. You feel what I'm saying?
That's pretty much what I was going to say. Right? If I said to Rob just today when we were talking, I said, if our life were to be the same 2 years from now, I will leave you. Because us together, with the abilities that we have and the talents that we have and the intelligence that we have, our life should not be the same as it was. Our life isn't the same when we got together 18 months ago as it is today as we sit on this couch. And therefore, our life will not be the same 2 years from now, right? And so for me, I've always believed if I come into something and someone has money, I'll sign a cohabitation agreement. I'll sign a prenup agreement, because I know that what I can do with my partner when we put our heads together, that money that you had, we'll make that. We may not make it exactly depending on how much, but we go make money that if God forbid anything happens, I'm going to be okay because I'm investing into the relationship. And I think that's what men need to be looking at. I'm going to speak to the men more than to the women. Is this woman worth the investment of time and resources?
That's the thing. A lot of women don't like that answer.
Is she worth the investment of time and resources? Because when we talk about finance, that's what that is. It's investment of time and resources. We all are investing our time and resources, no matter what relationship that you're in, right? Whether it's romantic or otherwise, it's an investment of time and resources. And is the person that you're investing your time and resources in worth it? Are you going to come out in the red or in the black?
Yeah.
And if we had more conversations like this in relationships during the courting period and all of those things, and again, we have check-ins, right? Check-ins on every aspect of the relationship. Finances is a big part of it. And so this idea that I would turn around to a man who was a high earner and all of those things and say, well, if you were to bring up this prenup, then I'm out. That's silly. It's again, fuck your feelings. That's you don't bring feelings to a fact fight, because again, if you put out your marriage, like if your stuff was a resume, if you had your resume, Kadar, and she had her resume based on what you just told us, you are probably going to be picked every single time by an employer. She's not, because in the situation, she may not be valuable to that employer. Is this person going to make me money, or are they going to cost me money?
Yeah. I think that's exactly it. I think that it's that, again, you're more worried about what's already there and trying to get a piece of what's already there than what y'all gonna build in the future. So therefore, having a problem with a prenup is probably a huge.
It's a red flag to me. And I'm speaking as a woman, right? Again, I will sign a cohabitation agreement, because there's certain, depending on the state you're in, the country that you're in, the period of time that you're in a cohabitation situation, you can be considered legally married by law.
In certain states, yeah.
And so there are certain places, exactly, 1 year, 2 years, depending on the state and the country. Therefore, I will own 50% of whatever. So again, if I'm coming to a situation with my man and he's a high earner and he's got all of these things, sure, babe, cohabitation agreement is, because again, I believe in our ability to make stuff together. So again, as a woman, I find it uncomfortable when other women are like, well, if he loved me, fuck love. I don't know when we got into this space that love is what's supposed to drive a relationship. It's just not even sensible. Do you think our great-grandparents necessarily loved each other, and our grandparents? Sometimes that was love. They grew to be fond of each other, and yes, they grew into love. But the initial wasn't love. It was understood that two people together, building a life together, was a hell of a lot better than one person. So we're all here with the mushy gooey, and I want a man who loves me, and he's going to adore me because I'm a prize. Is this Disney? But anyways, I'm going to get off my thing. So Sterling says that debt is not necessarily a bad thing, but what kind of debt we talking? Because you living beyond your means, or are you using your credit for good? She also says prenup. Duke said, I dated a girl with bad credit, and the first thing that came to my head was, I can't build with you. At this age, I need a woman with good credit and financial sense. And then Sterling says to Cigar, Mekar Guan. Kadar says she has a prenuptial. She says a prenuptial is planning to leave. No, a prenuptial is protection of assets. You only get a prenup if you have something to protect. Poor people aren't getting prenups when you don't have anything to protect. What, your Nike collection and my, Steve Madden's or all those shoes, like there's nothing to protect. But a prenup is meant to protect assets. And so therefore, listen, whoever is the larger financial earner, whether it's man or woman, I would suggest a prenup.
Yeah, because to me, man, a prenup is nothing more than establishing the floor of the relationship, of the marriage. Saying whatever he did, whatever you had going on, that predates this situation, and that is on you. And what you do from this point on forward is together and community property.
So Sterling says prenup is protecting your interest, bro. Duke Nation says she knows that she's broke, so she wants to make sure she get half your shit. Sterling said, "Do Nation, good night, sir." And Nene, hello, good evening, peace and blessing. So Kadar says, I understand, but I'm 50, so I think I'm not marriage material, so I just enjoy what it is. And then Duke said, why would you think being 50 is not marriage material? I am so interested in that as well. Sorlin says, Kadar, what? How are you putting yourself on the shelf already? 50 is the new 35. I don't know about you, but your age has nothing to do with whether or not you're marriage material. Nini Be Nice said, speak. Duke says, exactly, 50 isn't anything. You just start life, my G. He says, I just enjoy having a beautiful woman, but I'm happy unmarried. We don't live together. Well, there you go.
Ain't nothing wrong with that, brother.
Well, I mean, Kadar did say he's twice divorced, so I can get it. I think after one marriage, we both have had one marriage, right? And so this would be both of our second marriage. I don't know if our marriage didn't work, if I would run into a third. I would be perfectly good just being out whatever. Like, I don't even know what life would look like after a second divorce, but that's kind of where I would be. So I get it. And again, if you're in a space where you're just like, marriage is off the table and she's cool with that, then she's cool with that. But again, here's the problem, Kadar. It doesn't seem like she's cool with that, because she's saying a prenup is off the table. So it implies thinking about marriage. A woman who's not thinking about marriage would never even think about the idea of a prenup. So the issue that I'm seeing that you're in, Kadar, is you're on one path and she's on another path, bro. And at one point, it's going to converge.
Yeah. Why aren't you marrying me?
That's what I'm saying. Kadar says, I have a home and middle-level investments. And Kadar says, Duke is right. Duke says, I've done one as well. One more for me, and then I'm done. That's how I feel. One more and I'm done. I again, the first one was one thing, and I think you learn from the first one. And I couldn't see myself going through a second and then wanting to do it, especially as a man. I think as a woman, it's very different, because most times as women, we lose a lot less in divorces, right? We end up coming out on top. So a man who's had to do it, and at the stage where Kadar is in, right? He would be losing a lot if he went through this again, especially with a woman who, I mean, don't marry that woman. Let me just say, that's all I'm going to say. If you decide that you want to get married, sir, I don't think she's it. But that's just my 2 cents. I don't know you from a can of paint, but
I just, again, hashback to, I mean, I understand your feelings for it, brethren, but you can't renegotiate after you gave up the cooch, man. Like, y'all been having a relationship without being married. She doesn't get to negotiate the change to the status quo just because she feels something is different. The only person that can initiate marriage talks is Kadar. She can't pressure him.
no, Soren said she ain't in.
All she can do is stop sleeping with him.
That's it. And again, him being a man of high value in demand, and listen, again, here's the thing about what we need to understand in a community is we do have to understand assets, liabilities, and do a cost-benefit analysis. I know it's not romantic, okay? But relationships aren't all about romance. Relationships about what is practical. When I join forces with this other person, will my life be better? If the answer is no, sayonara. I don't care what he or she look like. I don't care how great the pum pum and everything is. If the answer becomes no, me combining my life with this person does not make it better, goodbye. And again, all of this love, and love will prevail, and love is so great, and love. I can't. Kadar says, I told her we could have the ceremony with I'm done. I can't even finish reading that. Please read that.
I could see that pissing her off, bro. I told her we could have the ceremony with an actor official. LOL. It was a cold night when I bought that outfit up. So you offered her the fake marriage. Like we presented like you married, but we ain't actually really married. I can see why she would be mad at that, but I can also see why you would propose that. It's basically
because does she want a marriage or does she want a wedding? So he proposed a wedding.
Figure that out up first,
right? Because again, a woman who wants a marriage signs a prenup, understanding that she has a valuable husband. A woman who wants a wedding says, no, a prenup means that he doesn't love me, because she's all about the warm and fuzzy. So a marriage is very different than a wedding. So Duke says, love may not be the answer, but the boom boom has to be greater than greater cake. I'm done. Soren said Duke Nation is an actor. He could stand in for the officiants. Laughing my ass off.
Okay, y'all are crazy.
I absolutely love that. And that's the thing. I think we have to start looking, because again, finances in our community is such a big thing. Here's the problem. She wants the big show, but again, isn't part of a relationship to ensure that you're solid with the person that you're with. And if you're going to tell a man who is of high value, who's shown that he is a man that other women would want, because at 50, he's in the prime of his earning potential. He's still got 15 more years and advancement and movement and corner offices. So what he's making right now could go up 20, 25, 50% over the course of their marriage. Now she is entitled, quote unquote, to that exponential growth that he's made. He's not going to stay where he's at right now at 50. He's going to grow. So if she wanted the marriage and understood the value of you as the man, it would be different than she want a, as Jamaicans would say, Kadar, she want a poppy shua. But that's just me. Sterling Sage, never wanted the big show, would rather elope and then let's make the money and invest and build. I said to Rob, I'd rather take some money, buy a house, and get married in the backyard of the house that we own. That's my thing, right? Do most women want a big wedding nowadays? Yes. Here's the thing. I want a wedding, but I don't want a piece of poppy show. I don't want to know that we're getting married living in an apartment. I want to know. I would rather invite a small group of people to a home that we've bought and get married in our backyard. That would be my thing.
Hey.
Hey, Shammy.
Oh, it's your birthday tonight.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
So Shammy is one of our loyal viewers and followers. Happy birthday to you.
We'll send you a message after we get off. But happy birthday. Hope you're enjoying it.
So Sterling Sage says, nice little intimate ceremony and intimate dinner with friends and family. And again, so as when we're getting into relationships, are these conversations on the table?
Because they're deemed inappropriate early in relationships, which I don't understand why.
But again, at our age, if we're talking to, our audience is really the 35 and plus, right? 35 and over. And so for me, at 35 plus, should you not be looking at intentional dating? And if you're looking at intentional dating and living your life together, and let's assume you only have another 30, 35 years of life left after that stage, it shouldn't be where we're not talking about the things that are going to sustain us for a lifetime. Like, what are people talking about if not those things? What are y'all talking about?
Feelings. A lot of feelings, a lot of flim-flam, a lot of the past, a lot of what we don't want to happen, instead of, like, the list for what you don't want to happen is almost limitless. The list of what you actually need to occur for the thing to be what you need it to be, the list is probably a lot shorter. That should be the focus. But he said my woman better have my G-Wagon money. Like, there you go.
And what if men did approach dating in the same way? What if men approach dating in the, well, I'm going to need you to be on this?
Some men do.
And what is their success rate? Hold on. Kadar, you just made this interesting. Okay, sir. Let me set up a little more. So Kadar has said, for our viewers who've been tuning into this, I gave her a ring and a puppy and offered to let her move in. Is she willing to sign a cohabitation agreement if she moves in? That is my question. Because I would suggest, and this is coming from a woman who doesn't know you from Adam, but I would suggest if you are going to ask or offer to let her move in, she would have to sign a cohabitation agreement. You already said that you own your home, and therefore it would mean that if anything, and again, I don't know what state you live in, but depending on cohabitation state, then again, you need to be, to me, I think you just need to cover your bases. So he said a right-hand ring. Basically what a right-hand ring is, Duke, it's not an engagement ring. It's not a marriage. It's like a commitment ring. Yeah. So if it's on your right hand and your man gives it to you, it's a committed ring, but it's not a wedding ring.
Hey, don't let her see the Shoka dog. You know what you did? You know what you did? You just did the puffy. When a rapper comes in talking about they ain't getting their money, you like, hey, take that Rolls Royce out there. That's you. Take that puppy with it. It's a puppy in the Rolls Royce. That's yours.
Don't let her watch the replay.
Nah. He gave her the Suge Knight. Calm down, relax. Here you go. That hush money. Hush Money, Puppy, and Ring.
Listen, I get
You
it.
ain't getting no
Kadar
marriage,
says,
though.
I don't know. I'll think about it. I live in Washington. Yo, brethren, I'm going to tell you. Listen, I'm going to go all Patois Jamaican upon you. It make no sense for you, Mr. Valuable, to not protect his assets. That's all it's about. And these are two people. And again, I think sometimes when Rob and I speak, it almost sounds like, again, somebody asked us if we have a business arrangement. And I was like, well, isn't that what a relationship is? There is a sense of business to it. Because again, relationships should be practical. We have a whole show called Fuck Your Feelings. This is not just based on feelings. This is about, again, when we look at what the totality of a relationship could be over the next period of our life until death, we know how valuable we are to each other.
Ooh, I got a question for y'all, audience. What's better in a relationship? To be in love or to be winning?
Ooh. So what's better in a relationship? To be in love or be winning? Whatever your definition of winning is. But I know what winning looks like. So, but while people are thinking about that, Sorlin says it's a pretty piece of jewelry typically women bought for themselves if marriage relationship wasn't on the table. That is facts. There are some women who have bought their own rings, which, no, don't do that, ladies.
That's crazy.
Oh my God, I'm done. Duke says, fire for that, bun the right hand ring, tell her to fix up her credit and finances and come correct. Good night, show is done. Okay, We're done. We don't have anything else to say. So Sorlin says to like your partner and win. Oh, she said to like your partner and win. That is an interesting spin on it. So I don't have to love you, but I like you.
I want an option. Really.
Like you and
I like
win.
how Kadar said it. That's why his relationship is going the way it's going. He said, I love love. I win alone. Yeah, you're saying it's like, basically, I fuck with you, but not that much.
Love is nice, so for me, that is a winner. But Duke says he will take winning.
Thank you. That's really what I was trying to get to. I think most people get that, like, to be spinning your wheels, going through the motions, every day is the same day, but you're like,
I'm in
love.
love.
I love you too. Or would you rather be growing and developing and leveling, like, and then that could be incremental. I'm not talking about leaps and bounds and great strides, but continuous putting one foot in front of the next. That should be the goal of a relationship, not really love. Like I'm again speaking from someone who has had that first marriage and that first all of those other firsts. This is where that attitude comes from. You can love someone and not like them at all. We had that, so that's why we wanted to talk finances. I think that we're gonna continue building on this.
So
week
for the
after week.
for the next
You're
4
see
weeks,
some of these themes keep coming back up, coming back around, because all of this stuff is kind of intrinsic. It's linked together, you know, finances, sex, two huge components of relationships.
two huge components of divorces.
Finances can probably be fixed easier than sex, to be honest with you.
Do you think so?
I think so. Because there's two components to it. There's earning more and there's saving more. So you might not be able to earn more, but you can definitely make adjustments to save.
And this is actually where I'm going to disagree with you, because I think our mindset around money is the problem.
And
right?
You think people's mind, and again, we're just healthy discourse. You think people's mindsets around sex is easier to change?
Yes. Because I don't know if people think about, because sex is an exchange of fluids for a lot of people. It's bam, bam, bam. And they can do it with just about anybody, right? The idea of building with someone is different. So Kadar, oh my Lord. Duke is saying, Kadar, if you won the lottery, would you leave her? Sorlin says, so I'd rather win with someone that I actually like and there's mutual respect and grind mentality. Love waxes and wanes. Facts. Kadar says the sex is awesome and it clouds the judgment. Fuck your feelings.
A lot of brothers have been in that position. Just don't let yourself get backed into a corner in that, bro. Like that's a lot of good men have found themselves in situations that they didn't like so much with clouded judgment.
Here's the thing. That might fall off. Your earning potential will not. So unless something happens to you drastically, knock on wood, your earning potential may not. Her sexual drive and appetite, all that stuff, it's eventually going to dwindle. but your earning potential for the next 15 years will not. Home. Okay, so that you in it. You're in it to win it. So he's in it.
Yeah. Well, I think he's in that sweet spot, that or not so sweet spot, depending on your perspective of where it's just right. Ain't too hot, ain't too cold, just right.
It's what he needs for right now. Right. And I just think if it's what you need for right now, dude, it's hard in these streets. The pandemonium just showed people how important human touch is. So if it's working for you, it's working for you. You don't have to listen to us strangers here and these strangers online. However, I'm telling you as somebody whose nickname is the Golden Pum Pum, that Pum Pum ain't always it.
And the other thing I can also tell you is just right never stays just right. It either, because the atmosphere temperature is going to, if you take a hot bowl of something or a cold bowl of something and you settle it out, it's going to average out to the temperature of the atmosphere. You know what I'm saying? It's not going to stay in that sweet spot. So like I said, I can't blame a guy, because to me it just sounds like I fuck with you, but not that much. So eventually, when she gets to that point where she's mad and she's ready to terminate the relationship because he's not willing to capitulate to her, and also men know that date is coming. He's got a $5 word. You know, and I think that sometimes men know that day is coming, and they just will wait until the day comes and be like, "I'm gonna miss you." Would you want, if you were that man, if you were Kadar, do you want that years and years of I want what I want argument and not getting it? Like, is that not more stressful than just not giving it to the person walking away? It doesn't sound like he's getting that, really. You know, seems like it doesn't seem like he's getting a lot of stress in it.
Okay, this is the last comment, and then we're going, because I am dead. Sorlin said, "Listen, if she falls tomorrow and can't move her hip, it's lukewarm pum pum in a hurry." That is it, guys. Yeah.
He said, "Usually my relationships that's what I'm saying. Like, and then those growing pains start, and then he's like, no,
you know what that just triggered? No, you know what that just triggered to me? Your relationships or your marriages, Kadar? Because there's a difference between, you've had 2 marriages. So did your marriages have that sweet spot 2 years? And that might be the difference, right? I can stay in this if I don't marry her. But marrying her, my marriages have lasted 2 years. I'm not saying that's what you're saying. This is why I'm asking a question. That might be the mindset of it. If I don't marry her, we could go on and have a perfectly good relationship. But I've had 2 marriages and they were in that 2 whatever year time, and there's no sense in it.
Yeah, but like that's how I look at it. Like when I play ball, I told you, I would usually look at it as like around 6 months or so, because casual only stays casual for so long before one person or the other wants more. It's very rare that 2 people are usually just going to be cool with a long-term
casual relationship.
So
Kadar answered. So he said, "I was married for 5 years the first time, and second time 10 years." Okay, so just relationships so like, outside of that.
15 to throw into the next one, basically.
I get that.
I get it. But and again, and that's an unfortunate position, because as a man, I can't blame him. But as a woman, that's where you got to figure out what your purpose and what you're doing is, because, again, Kadar is chilling. He likes it where it is. She's probably the one that's positioning for more.
Well, and if you're one of the person that wants more, you have to leave.
You have to leave, and you got to figure that out sooner rather than later. Why are you going to wait 15 years?
Or you have to compromise.
Or you have, or
here's the problem. He offered a compromise.
He did.
And she said no. Right? So the reality is, you know, relationships are a compromise, because again, they're businesses, right? Nobody leaves a contract negotiation getting everything that they want, because just like everything else, you go back and forth until most people get some of what you want. You give them some what you want, but nobody walks away from a contract negotiation completely happy.
You're exactly right. I don't want to lose another house. And honestly, with what you've been experiencing and what you've been through, you have the right to expect that, and maybe that's a further indicator that she's not the right woman for you, because the right woman for you would
never be
what you've been through, would understand that that's your position, and would not feel like it's worth losing the relationship over changing the title.
Here is where I'm saying about our mindset and thoughts about money. And this is going to be my last comment, and then we're going to do some questions.
Okay.
A prenup is designed to ensure you don't actually lose. The man doesn't lose and the woman doesn't lose, right? And we're taking feelings out of this crap, right? No lawyer on my side is going to sign off on something where I lose. A lot of people get into relationships, even a cohabitation agreement, which is why I'd be perfectly fine with signing one. If we had a cohabitation agreement, it would have to guarantee that if I had to leave the relationship for any reason by your cause, you would have to give me a lump sum of money for me to start my life over, because we are no longer living together, and whatever that means. That's what prenuptial agreement and cohabitation agreements are, is that you are guaranteed to get something. It may not be as much as you would normally get if there was no prenup or cohabitation agreement in space. But the reality is, if there is no prenup or no cohabitation agreement, you're going through the course of the law, and that's going to take years. And guess what? That's dipping into the money you could have because you're paying lawyers and time and all those things. A prenup is very clear. This relationship is over. We go to the prenup. We go in front of a judge. It's designed to do that. The same with the cohabitation agreement. It was like, you go get a cohabitation agreement, that's somewhere at a lawyer's office. Mm-hmm. So if I call my lawyer and say the relationship is over, it's enacting to say, Mr. Stevenson, you now owe her X amount of dollars according to this cohabitation agreement that you signed. And I think if women were looking at, again, logic over feelings, they would realize in actuality, a prenup or a cohabitation agreement is to their benefit, not their detriment.
I'd agree with you. That's how I would see it as well.
So again, we're going to be doing this for the entire month. We are going to answer 2 questions, well, 1 question each out of this bowl. If you guys have any questions for us, we're happy to hear it. Anything you want us to talk about? I know we kind of went all over the place today, but again, if there's any specific things you want to talk, again, Rob's degree is in economics and he's got an MBA in international finance, so he's very well versed. Shammy Tonia say, would one recommend it when a prenup? Ooh, that was a good question. Hold on a second. Question. Would one recommend a prenup when one partner has federal student loans? Yup.
Yep, because that's just
you can't be seen.
Oh, sorry. Well, yeah, and that's where the conversation. But yeah, those were your student loans going into the relationship. Whichever partner that was, I don't think it's unreasonable to not expect in the event that the relationship does dissolve. The one thing you can avoid is death in student loans, at least until Mr. Biden follows through on some of his promises. That's not unreasonable. That's stating that I will not pick up half of the obligations of your student loan debt if this relationship were to dissolve. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Like what she was saying, when do you think is a better time to pay the lawyers and address issues? Before they happen or after? That's really all it comes down to. You're basically setting the stage. This is what you get. This is what I had. This is what you had. This is what you get. This is what I get. And usually it's baked into it 1 to 3 years, 3 to 9 years. Like even the length of the relationship.
It depends on how much you get. Exactly.
It's a negotiation.
The longer
a prenup is a fucking relationship contract.
It is. And the longer you stay in the marriage or in the cohabitation, because again, some people may not want to get married, but they do want to live together, right? And so the longer you stay in whatever that relationship looks like, the more you actually get. That's how those work. And so it's almost incentivized. Like 1 to 3 years, you get this amount. 3 to 5 years. After like 10, depending on the person, after 15 years, then you're entitled to X. And you know that once you hit the 15-year mark. But again, if you're staying with someone for those amount of time, it ain't because of you're going to get incentivized. It's because you're committed to the commitments of your relationship.
Exactly, which is the whole purpose of the prenup.
You're committed to the commitment of the relationship, not what comes with the benefits of the relationship, right? Exactly. There's 2 different parts. We are committed to the commitment of being in a relationship. Yes, the benefits are great, but the benefits may wait. Listen, from year to year, from job to job, from state to state, from moment to moment, there could be a crash right now. There could be all of these things that happen, which will change the benefits, right? But the commitment to the commitment of the relationship is very, very different. And so, again, how practical are you going into these relationship conversations was, especially when it comes to discussions around finances. We need to be talking about finances in our community as a whole, in our relationship with our children, all of it. It is so very important. So Kadar just said, oh, Jesus, she gonna make this woman not like us. My mind says you guys are right, but the sex is awesome. I'm afraid to lose again. Y'all gonna make me have a hard conversation tonight. Tell her to reach out to me. Happy to have a discussion, woman to woman.
Kadar really, like, I think that's the non-negotiating is like, look, if I'm actually entertaining the idea of making you my wife, but I would never feel comfortable doing that without a prenup with what I've been through. And if she's got a problem with that, that's your answer, bro.
Oh my God. Kadar says, I think I better go shop for a dog before. You did offer her the puppy and the right hand ring, so.
Can a prenuptial be revisited or changed every 1 to 3 years if desired? I believe
yes,
so, as long as both parties are willing to sign off on it.
So what will happen is when you both sit down with the lawyer, that is part of the actual agreement, that it's revisited. Like we do the same with our unofficial relationship contract is, we're baked in, I think ours is 18 months. Yeah. We talked about every 18 months, or if there's a major life change, we take a look at our relationship contract. The same can be said with a prenup or a cohabitation agreement. I would suggest if you are going into a living situation and you both will have a lot to lose or one will have a lot to lose, sign a cohabitation agreement. Mm-hmm. It is very important.
And it will probably help tremendously in the event of the relationship not going the distance. The transition out of the relationship is cleaner. Would you rather have a smooth exit or a messy exit?
But again, when do you plan for the disaster? Before the disaster or while you're in the disaster? Right?
Or after the disaster happened.
Like, oh my God.
That's when you start your
planning. Right. We need to be more proactive in our relationships, not reactive. Reactive, unfortunately for men, is women with hurt feelings, going to divorce them, talking about irreconcilable differences, and then going on Instagram talking about their narcissist cheater, right? Like that's reactive. Proactive is having a grown person conversation because, again, we're talking to people 35 and older who are established in their careers and who are grown folks and looking to have grown relationships. Two grown people sitting down and talking about a cost-benefit analysis, especially two grown educated people, why would feelings be involved? It's a benefit to both parties. Yeah. This is, again, and the thing is about it, as much as I am a woman with feelings, I also have a very logical side. And logic will always outweigh feelings for me. Yeah, if it doesn't make sense, like sometimes I'll talk to Robert, I'm like, but that doesn't make sense. Right? Oh, Kadar wants to come on.
Jump on. And again, I'll say this. Failure to plan. That's true.
We've got about another 5 to 10 minutes. Let me see if Kadar drops on. I did just accept the request, did I not? Yes, I did.
What's up, man?
Can you
Hello,
hear
everyone?
us?
I can hear you fine. Thank you very much for taking my call.
Of course.
Yeah, you guys are very, very correct in everything you're saying. I've been married twice, and I just don't want to go through the big divorce again and all that stuff. But I do want to be monogamous and be with this person for the rest of my life. But I just don't want to do the marriage. I lost big time in my second marriage, and so I don't want to take that loss again. So
let me ask you a question, Kadar. Does she want to be with you for the rest of her life?
I think so. I'm pretty sure. We're in a monogamous relationship. And this COVID then taught me it's kind of cold out here. There's no places to go out, and there ain't no clubs no more. None of that kind of stuff. So it's like I don't think I'm settling. I think she's a very beautiful woman, and I'm very, very happy and everything. But the big thing is that it's expensive here in Seattle, and I don't want to go through losing another house or. I just finished paying off my alimony. I don't want to do that again.
No, I get it, brother. And I would even say if y'all got to get a third party involved, I think that the issue might be really stemming from you looking at the prenup as having one purpose and she's looking at it as having maybe another person. Your sentiments are not based in trauma. They're actually based in wisdom. You learn from your experiences. I don't want to go through that again. Not saying I'm unwilling to go through that again. That's when the trauma is winning. If you're just now, I would never do that. No, you're saying, but I would just need certain conditions to be met to feel comfortable with that. And I think if this is what she really wants to do, and looking at that from the perspective of this is guarantee that we both win, because again, I'll pay for your attorney to negotiate your side of the prenup. Why would your attorney want you to sign off on something that Sheba was saying that's not going to be in your best benefit down the road? Because that's where men lose financially, women lose in time. Again, men, we labor physically, women labor emotionally. You know what I'm saying? So again, that those things have historically, that's where the woman loses. So understanding her fears, you love this woman enough. I'm sure if it did go that direction, that I understand what you put into the relationship. I'm just not trying to have it to where you get to determine what's yours and what you're going to take from me. That's too much.
Here's a question that I think, again, not romantic,
Exactly.
but I think the question that you may want to ask or you may want to pose to her is, what are you willing to give up to be in this relationship for the long haul?
Yeah.
Everyone thinks about what they're willing to gain, right? To be in this relationship with him, I had to give up. So I grew up in Toronto, Canada. And so I had to leave Toronto and my life behind to be in this relationship. But it was worth it to me because what we are going to build, I had already done it over there. I knew what it was like over there, and I gave up. Like I left my I have a 20-year-old that's still in Toronto going to school, but even she was like, "No, mommy, this is the direction you need to go in. It's fine, right?" What is she willing to give up to be with you? Because a lot of she knows what she's gaining. She's gaining you, but what is she willing to give up? That is a question that I'd be curious to know how she answers it.
Yeah, you guys are very, very correct. Like I said, it's going to be a very difficult conversation in about an hour.
Yeah. But just tell her again, get out. Can we stay out of the feelings a bit and really just talk about the logic of the conversation? And it doesn't sound as bad as it sounded initially, brother. It does sound like, again, from your perspective, I completely respect the position. I think it's a wise position to take. She needs to align her expectations of you with where you're really at. That's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, because I'm willing to have like a big, gigantic like wedding with all the people and flowers and food and all that stuff. I just don't want to be like married anymore. Not because I don't want to be, I want to be monogamous. I don't want to see anyone else and any of those things. I just have found, and with most of the people I know, when they get divorced, they lose a lot. And I lost a lot in my last marriage. And so, I just got everything back really good again. And I just don't want to take a chance on all that again. I just don't want to do that.
So why did Rob and I like to call it, and I think Dr. Umar says it best, is that's white people paperwork. So you're willing to show her your commitment to her and everyone around her. That should be enough.
Yeah.
Because what you're saying is, I'm committing to you. You're just not signing the white man's paperwork, because the white man's paperwork, God forbid it doesn't work, has you going through this again. And now you're 60, looking at your third divorce, and that's not something that you want, but you're willing to commit to her. And again, a cohabitation agreement still means that she comes out, if this ends, on the winning end of it. She doesn't lose anything.
No, and you actually hit it. I think that's the conversation for you, Kadar. It's, in one hand, you have a prenup. In the other hand, you have an artificial marriage. So not a legally binding marriage. It's more of a, look, our ancestors got married by the river by another slave.
And they were not legal.
There were no white people paperwork involved in none of that. So she has the option. If you wanted to be formal and legal, then you need to sign this prenup. If you just want the embodiment and the visual representation, you want me to recognize you in front of the community, our friends, all of that, then we can do that too. And that's not going to be free either. That's going to cost you a couple of dollars. You know what I'm saying? And that's, again, a part of the commitment. But if she can't accept either one of those, she's actually the one being unreasonable.
Well, thank you very much for all your good advice. I've been thinking about this for a while, and I just been kind of like, you get lost with all the fringe benefits and all the good stuff, but I just don't want to. I just really don't want to take that. Everyone I know that's been married and divorced, they like, don't never do that again. Don't never do that again. And I'm like, I understand. But I do want to be with this woman. I love her very much, and everything is good and everything, you know.
Like
but I just don't want to do. I just don't want to take that. You know, like you guys say, the white man's paperwork. I don't want to do that. I just don't want. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that.
You did it twice, and again, it cost you. So we completely get it.
It's one or the other.
Yeah, I don't mind paying for the gigantic wedding with 20 bridesmaids and all that stuff and birds and all that stuff. I don't care. Any of that stuff, I don't mind, you know, but I just don't want to do the whole thing. I was like, maybe we can hire an actor to be a priest or something, you know.
It's one or the other.
She's got two hands. She got to choose red pill or blue pill. Which one you want?
Well, thank you guys very, very much. I really enjoy your show.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for
Have
sharing.
a good night. We're always around.
All right, you guys. All right.
Bye.
Have a good night. Bye-bye.
So we want to thank everyone. We are going to wrap up. Thanks, Kadar, for joining us. We've got one question we'll ask each other from this bowl. I can see that Sorrel and Sage and Duke Nation have been having a very great conversation.
Virgos are crazy. Who's the Virgo?
My pygmies are Virgo, but go on.
Oh, yes. If I had a one-night stand after drinking too much, how would you react? Could you forgive me? We've had this conversation probably a dozen times already. You know what I mean?
I know you forgive me.
It would be the context around the situation. I would imagine that it would be a forgivable situation. So, yeah.
Thank you. And I've only been drunk once in my life, and it will never happen again. So it ain't gonna happen. Mm-hmm. So is divorce an option? Why or why not? So I've already been divorced once. It is not an option on the table. I've learned from the mistakes I made in having that person choose me and then accepting that choice. And I've chosen differently. I think we've both chosen each other very differently. And so for you and I, once the ring is on and the I do is dust, it's the commitment to the commitment. So
Duke said, hell no.
So Duke said, my woman having a one night stand. Oh, hell no. Well, thank God I'm not with you, dude.
And let's be real, like men are way more tender about that shit.
On a soft antenna and feely.
Expect a woman to just get over infidelity, but let a man get cheating on and that nigga be ready to blow the town up.
That is facts. So we want to thank everyone for joining us. This was a very spirited conversation, guys. I really, truly, truly appreciate everybody that's joining us and being a part of this. Before we go, Sorlin Sage is our sponsor. I will read her final comment. She said, if you're married to divorce, then don't bother. Go into it thinking that you're in it to win it. And you know what's in it to win it? If you get products from Sorrel and Sage. Yes. You can find Sorrel and Sage on Instagram at Sorrel and Sage CA and on their website at shopsorrelandsage.com. They make skincare for the sensitive soul, and everything they make is amazing. Their new product line will be coming out in the middle or the end of this month. And trust us, you want to be a part of it. We've already been getting some samples. So appreciate Sorrel and Sage. We appreciate every single person that's joined us, and we will see you next week. Please hit us up in our DM if you would like to, again, to have certain discussions around money, because we'll be talking finances for the rest of March. Robert?
Black Finance Month, yes.
Black Finance Month.
Kadar, shout outs. Thanks for joining. Thanks for sharing. We'll be doing this next week, and I think there's 5 Thursdays in March.
So we'll have 4 more to go.
Part episode. Duke Nation said facts. The entire city up and down. Like, again, yes, that's just the way we are. Women, I think, have to be cognizant of that. And please create a new beard oil called Prenup. Yes.
And with that, we hope you bring a little fuck your feelings into your week. Until next time, we will see you next Thursday. He will need the Prenup beard oil in his care pack. Good night, everybody. We love you. See you next week. Bye.